All right, we're rolling.
So people
Get your
can see
site
us
open.
just staring at our computers right now. I'm going to it right now.
Yep, we're
Ridiculous, right?
just a bunch of crazy guys staring at our computer on live stream. All right, hey guys,
Okay.
everybody. Jason Reese with Focus Creative Studio, Kevin Tolley with Steel Mill Modelers. We are live tonight. We're running through some different stuff, actually trying to set up cameras. We're going to talk a little bit about lights tonight. So completely some non 3D printed related stuff, but it's our endeavor to find the perfect streaming setup as we plow into this. One of these days, I'll have to show what my desktop looks like on a stream
Right.
night. Because I feel like I'm in a studio of some kind trying to do something I'm not even remotely qualified to do.
Well, we're both
But
kind of bumbling through this, so
it's
if
fun.
you
It's
guys
different.
if you guys that are watching can like introduce yourselves on the um all two of you on the comments, I'd appreciate it just so we know who we're talking to. Maybe even put up what kind of modeling you do, if it's steel mill or refinery, or you're just curious.
You might be a lurker tonight and you just need to drop a hello in the chat, and that's perfectly fine too.
Yeah.
So, but I think one of the things Kevin and I left off with last time was talking, really wanted to get into more of some of the post processing, I'm just going to call them woes, that we see
Mm.
happen with some of our models that go out the door. And you're like, sandpaper's good, the file's good. You should use those before you just paint your model. Because I know I've seen some of those examples, and I'm like, oh, not what I really intended, but I get it.
Yeah.
But I think it really opens up an opportunity for us to talk about scratch building a little bit in a role that I think you and I are on the same page with. Hey, we're just filling a niche. We're not really trying to build complete model kits that you buy, shake the box, and then you build stuff like a styrene kit
Right.
from Walters or somebody else. I mean, our intent is really to do custom stuff that fits the scratch builder market
Right.
and allow people to do cool stuff. So with that, I'll ask you, what's your worst nightmare that you've had go out the door that you really wish somebody to realize they bought a 3D printed model and it required work?
Um, that's it's actually funny because the guys, I would assume the guys buying our parts are probably the same kind of person that would have been buying, Details Associates or, Grant Line or something back in the day. And even that stuff you had to clean up. So it's actually been kind of amazing to me to see some of the guys modeling, and they're really nice models. And then I see my parts in their what they've built, and the contact points are still all over them. And I'm like, but the sprue contact points from the plastic kit are gone. You obviously did work and cut them off, or sanded the contact points from that off. I at times I wonder if I shouldn't just send the parts with the supports attached still.
Well,
You know,
it,
and then they
it,
would maybe it would make them go, oh, wait a minute, this is just like a sprue. I need to cut these off. But
and
some of
there
them are kind of intricate on how you get it out. So
yeah, there
I'd
are
be
some
nervous
guys
about
that
doing
do
that.
that. I've seen some supports left on models, uh, but yeah, if you've got stuff kind of hidden inside and they're intricate to get the supports off the model, I can just see
Yeah,
us sending something like that out, and a modeler saying, "What the hell is this? I thought this
yeah,
was going
this
to be
thing
a
is
cool
garbage.
model." But
Yeah, I actually had a guy that I shipped. Now everything that I don't know how I'm sure your company policy is the same. Anything that I ship, if a guy doesn't like it, he's free to send it back. At least email me and say, "Hey, I don't like this," and I'll be like, "Oh, okay. Well, what don't you like about it? Maybe I can correct it in the CAD file or how it's supported, and print it out, and I'll send you a new one."
right,
Um, my only thing there is that I want people to send that part back. Partly because there are people out there I know that will, oh, I'm just going to get a freebie, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm always nervous. I'm always nervous about that. But yeah, so I don't understand why a guy would pull that stuff out. This guy posted on Facebook that the parts were kind of junky, and I'm like, okay, I called him out. I was like, hey, you didn't email me and say, hey, I'm dissatisfied with the parts. Because I would gladly replace them. And B, I'm not really sure what he was expecting. If he was expecting like a die cast part that would just out of the box and it's gorgeous and you put it on. I mean, a lot of the stuff is really nice, but you still have to clean the contact points off of it.
Yeah, Kevin, you bring up a good point that I hadn't really thought about literally till just now. I'm wondering if there's a misconception or an expectation level that someone hears 3D printed parts and they think it is going to come out like a perfect piece that they don't have to do any work to. Um, because there are some parts on the engineering side of what we do with the higher end printers that's almost like what it is. I mean, it's the laser centering stuff that doesn't have supports because of the way it's printed in the bed of silica or however it works. I'm not super familiar with that process, but and Shapeways is kind of the same way. I mean, you build your supports into your model, but it's like a sprue in that regard. You don't have to worry about supporting islands for anything you send to Shapeways.
Yeah, no.
And so it's very different in that regard. That I guess if all anybody knows is Shapeways, then I guess I can kind of see where there would be a slight disconnect.
I mean, just for the guys at home, and as soon as I can see if I can get my camera working, this
You got as much plastic in that supporting the actual part.
is this.
Yeah. Pipe rack.
Right? This is a pipe rack for the side of a building. But I don't ship them. This has been finished. Right? So I already took all the contact points off and finished it. This is how it comes off the printer. And I actually cure. A lot of times I don't cure them with the supports on, but these I do because they're so thin.
Yeah.
If you don't, I won't say they're guaranteed to warp, but this guy will probably warp because the flange where it secures to the building wall is only like 30 thousandths thick. I made it super thin.
Right.
Or 25. I don't remember. I'd have to measure it, but I didn't want it to look bulky on the side of the building because the real ones don't. And it's going to be on a building where it's going to be on this building that I'm building. Nobody's really ever going to be able to bump it. So,
right. Well, I mean, it's that part you could actually ship probably with the supports on. That's probably not as intricate as some of the other stuff you do.
Yeah, and some of the stuff I will ship with supports on it because it's delicate, and I usually include a little note saying, this is crazy delicate. Don't. And if it's already cured, that means it's fragile. When they're not cured, they're still a little bendy. They're a little pliable. So if you are using like a pair of Xeron cutters like these guys, and the part moves, it doesn't really hurt it. When it's cured, it's a different story. A lot of times I'll use like a chisel knife blade and I'll nick it so that it'll break off really easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny too to me that people would think that they're going to get a 3D printed part that's mint and just ready to glue on, because plastic models are injection molded, so they're always on a sprue. If you get a brass part, they're usually either die cast, and even then they're usually on some kind of sprue, or there's a there's the piece of brass on it where the injection mold was injecting the part into the cavity.
Or like even with the spin casting with white metal stuff. I mean, there's flash and
Yeah, that stuff's got flash on it, so there, other than like what you were talking about, the laser sintered stuff, um, that stuff, yeah, that's like out of the vat and you're good. But that's like a $30,000 printer too. So
right, which means our parts would cost 4 and 5 times as much, and we wouldn't be selling
easily.
anything. So
Trust me, if I had one of those printers, my stuff would be golden, and I would charge appropriately for it. I don't think I would charge to pay off the printer, but I would certainly charge appropriately for it. And I think I think you and I are both at a happy medium between crazy expensive and
exactly,
really poor quality.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, it's, I consider the stuff that you and I are both doing above a lot of the plastic kits that are out there.
Sure.
And then there's some stuff that with plastic injection molding that we can't compete with, just because it's too thin and fragile, and that process works great for that. But
right.
In general, we're putting models out there that either don't exist or are actually better than some options that might be available commercially because they're still using 1960s and 70s molds or something. And so we've updated
because people don't realize how much molds cost.
Right.
I've been told a mold for like a box car is like $100,000 mold.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know it was that much.
Yeah, because even with CNC processing, I'm sure that probably lowered some of the price, but it's a lot of really intricate detail work that goes into like a boxcar body. And
well, no wonder they don't want to do limited runs all the time.
Yeah, I mean the precision, and I had a guy working for me that was a master die maker, and he could hold a tolerance down to like a 10,000th of an inch, which is insane.
That's crazy.
I can hold a tolerance to about 5/10,000ths of an inch or 4/10,000ths of an inch, but going beyond that is insanity. And he could nail that stuff all the time.
Wow. Yeah, we're not going to get there with what we do, and that's okay.
Right.
All right, so let's step backwards a second. I'm curious on when your stuff. Well, before I get to that, let me ask you this: do you always use the same resin, or are you switching colors and types of resin with your form and experimenting with other stuff? I'm not familiar enough with Form's offerings to know if you're got some flexibility to use other stuff, like adding resins that are more flexible in nature, so when you cure them, they still have a flex to them, or if everything is just rigid, hard, brittle once you cure everything.
So Form has an amazing number of resins to choose from. I have only experimented with 2.
Okay.
The one I initially started using was gray, and the gray is for modeling. It's specifically formulated for what I'm doing with it.
Right.
White I have tried because they mistakenly sent me a liter, and I buy so much resin from them that they were like, "Well, just keep it and try it out." I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
The printer would not go down to 1 micron or quarter micron resolution. It only had 1.5 micron resolution available. So
okay.
The white you could not do is fine a detail with. I normally print at 0.5 micron.
That's where I normally print.
I could print. Yeah, I could print in gray. I could print at quarter micron. It like a little over doubles the print time, but because something that would have 400 layers suddenly has 1,000 layers, or not 1,000, 800 layers. I've actually have printed really tiny things at the quarter micron because they print better.
Right.
But they have resin where you could print rubber. It's a rubber-like substance.
Okay, so they do have several options.
They actually have a type of resin it's for casting, and you print it in Fusion. You make a negative, so you're essentially printing a mold.
Okay.
And it prints it in two pieces. And then it has locking lugs on it and everything. You can clamp it together and pour white metal into it.
Ah.
And I don't know how many castings you can get out of it, but you can actually cast things in like white metal or lead.
Okay. That's interesting. So that gets into some of like the dental resins that are available in the market. So the reason I asked
they do
the reason I was asking
that stuff
is because one of the resins that I use, you can see I can flex it.
Oh yeah, look at that.
And so
it's pretty handy for railings.
Exactly. What I was running into was that some of the guys that were buying some platforms that I did a while back, it's like the big meaty hand syndrome. You pull something out of the package and you just aren't delicate enough with it. And because the handrails were fine, they were snapping the handrails before they even got started with processing. And I was like, well,
wow.
I can't be having that all the time. I didn't want to go up to these, the 1 millimeter stuff that you see with all the other, standard big manufacturer kits out there. So I switched over to a product from 3DRS, just their standard gray resin, and it has that flex built into it. And now you can cure it longer and make it more rigid as part of the post process. But what I ran into in doing that was that it would crack the parts, not like wide open visible cracks that you would see it happening, but when I would go to prime a model, it's like crackled paint. The resin structure had been curing so long to make it more brittle that it literally started cracking. And so I've gotten to a point where I use this resin, and when I let it dry out completely, I'll cure it for anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'm done. Which I think is a big time advantage over your post curing time. Didn't you mention last time you were at like 45 minutes or an hour to cure stuff?
I put it in the oven, or I
Performs resin?
No.
Wow, that's a huge advantage. Yeah, you can definitely over cure most of the resins that I'm working with, available from any number of manufacturers. If you cure them too long, you end up with problems with the cracking and splitting of prints and.
Oh yeah, no, like these are stands for crucibles.
Yeah,
and you can see how thin that is. I mean the back of it is, but these I think I did in the sunlight for a whole afternoon. I actually forgot they were out there. And they're fine. You can see that there's no cracks or anything in it.
Yeah.
Their resin is expensive, but they have one called Gray Pro too, which I've never tried. Because it's I want to say it's $250 a liter. or maybe $200 a liter. I've never tried it. I actually asked one of the guys that I was emailing with one time, so what's the difference between Gray and Gray Pro? And I think he just said it holds detail better or whatever, but I'm pretty happy with the detail, I mean, I've got.
At least he didn't just say about $120.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I've got, you can see the lettering in here.
Yeah.
I think the lettering looks great. And, it's a bottom pour teaming ladle. I mean, that's actually, I haven't cleaned that up, but that's how this prints. It prints very nicely. You can see it's really thin wall.
Right. Go back to that that was an overhead crane part that you had thrown up before just there a second ago.
Yeah, it's a
That's a classic example of the connection points there along that bottom edge.
Oh yeah, this thing's
So,
covered in connection points because the way I print it.
okay. So what do you say to modelers that get a part like that their process needs to be to clean that thing up? Because I use files, sanding sticks, wet dry sandpaper. I mean, I gotta go through pretty much every option available to get rid of all those to try and get to a perfect finish.
I primarily use, to get rid of the little tits, on round items, I use this thing called a Riffler file.
Okay.
It's got nice little, it's actually a file all the way out to here. I also use, I don't really so much use sanding sticks.
Okay.
I use flat files. Trying to find my flat file. I don't know where it is. Oh, I just use a little jeweler's file.
Yeah.
This one is made. You can buy these where they've got a cutting edge, and then they've got you can buy them where one edge is smooth, so that you're not filing something if you're up against an edge. So this one has a cutting edge. The edge is a cutting edge. Both faces are cutting edges, and then this edge is smooth. It's got no teeth on it.
And those aren't that expensive. You can get those at your local hobby stores if you don't want to go and get really, really nice ones. But I mean, even a nice set is $30.
These are needle files. No, I paid $5 for these at the swap meet.
Gotcha.
I didn't even buy, because I'm doing plastic and resin. I got those at a swap meet. The guy who was selling all the Chinese tools. I got them at a swap meet, I don't know, 2 years ago for $5. They work fine. The thing that most people don't have when they're using files, and I have found you definitely have to know this when you're using files with when you're using files with resin, is a file card. And a lot of guys don't have this, and then the file gets clogged, and they don't. You have to keep it clean.
Right.
And a file card is what you use. This is a little tiny one that I've had for years. I don't know where I got it, but it's definitely a must, because once you keep your files clean, you don't have to put as much down pressure on especially on a resin part. You don't want to put a lot of down pressure on it anyway.
Let the file do the work.
Yeah, honestly, for getting into little tiny places to get a contact point off or whatever, I use the good old fashioned number 11 chisel blade, and I use a 19 on my big red handle. I actually like using.
You mean you don't have to have special tools to do this stuff?
No.
Oh, and this is what I wish that people would understand, is that at some point when you're a modeler, you're going to have most of the stuff you need to clean our parts up. Right. Even if it was as bare bones as like a nail file you stole from your wife's cabinet.
Mom.
That's better. Exactly. That's better than nothing.
I mean, we've got 3 guys watching, James Musser and Alex G. I have fond memories of it's a stupid sidebar. I'm going to talk about it anyway. I have fond memories of, I would take these as a young kid. My mother had these all over the house, and I would snatch them because they worked great for building models. You could sand the edge of a part and get it, a straight edge and get it clean or whatever. And then she would go looking for them and, yell at me, "Where's my nail file?" And it didn't dawn on me until I built my hobby desk that I have here. One day I was in Walgreens and I happened to look and see them, and I'm like, oh, I should buy a package of those. And at that instant, I'm 51, and it was this summer, I think.
And you're in the makeup aisle?
I was like, yeah. I was like, it dawned on me, why did my mother never go, okay, so he's going to use these all the time, I should just buy him a package.
Because it was probably $2 or $1 back then.
Oh my God, yeah, they were probably 50 cents or a buck. But anyway, I use those. I do use those. I do have the sanding sticks. I actually don't really like the sanding sticks very much. I have used them on some of my parts, but I actually don't like them very much. I usually get to where, especially because they bend easily and they wear out so quick. And once you use a riffler file to do the job, you can see that's very pointed,
Right.
and the file actually runs all the way until the end of this, and you can see compared to my finger how tiny it is. Um, but I floor files, and I actually sell in my store. I sell a kit of these, and it's not just this one. This is just the one I use all the time. I mean, I hate that because you buy a kit, and I'm trying to sell you kits, but I sell you a little package of these Riffler files, and there's a bunch in it. But I have to tell you, I just kind of use this
You
guy
only
the
use
most. But
one.
there are like flat versions of this. There's a flat version too where it doesn't have this curve on it. But the great thing about this guy is when you're doing a curved object like the base of this slag pot, instead of going back and forth like you would with a flat file, you actually use the curved part of it and you make little circles over where you're trying to get rid of. And it actually, like, you have to get used to the pressure, but it will blend out the little contact point and get rid of it and make it like it's not even there. And then I actually jump over to um, like 800 grit wet dry. I go stand in the sink in the kitchen and run the
Yeah.
water on it, and I wet sand it.
Polish it up a
And
little bit.
yeah, I mean you end up with a surface. I mean, this looks like it might be horrible because of the way the light's hitting it, but this is like baby smooth, and it's actually no different than the rest of the part. Um, and I just went over it with the wet. And actually, when you go to paint it, a lot of modelers don't remember that when you go to paint this, even though you're putting on crazy, like I thin my paint out a lot and I put really thin coats on,
Right.
but that paint is still going to fill tiny imperfections as well. And then you're going to weather it too. So, I mean, I like getting it nice and smooth so that I'm starting with a smooth base,
Right.
but, um, but ultimately I'm going to weather it. And, if it's concrete, like the base of that thing is concrete. So actually on this part, I don't know if you have stuff that's concrete too. It's got a concrete base, but this part of this device is concrete. So
Right.
actually what I'll do when I do go to paint it, before I paint it, I'll actually um usually when they pour concrete like that, if you look at it, it gets these like
It's not perfect.
striations in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it gets these like striations that run around it. They're horizontal striations rather than up and down. And I will actually take um, like 120 grit or not 120 grit, probably like 240, and I'll run the sandpaper around it and kind of not be careful. And so that when I paint it, it has the texture in it already that it's kind of concrete looking.
It's a tips and tricks session that we just need to do one of these times down the road on picking something, whether it's a flat wall, a round wall, and talk
Yeah,
about
right.
those things. And hey, guys, that's one of the things that Kevin and I were talking about before we jumped on is, hey, we're thinking maybe the next stream we do, we're just going to do a live modeling session. I I don't know how many projects you have on your plate. I have my desk is just a mess because I'm in the middle of still testing things out, but I'm trying to actually build stuff for me so that I
Yeah,
can
right
get
on.
my layout rolling because I just keep rolling into this testing phase. Like I just got to be done. So I've dedicated 2 days, 2 nights a week now, where it's just my time to model. And so
Right.
one of those will be, hey, the next time we jump on, let's what are you working on? What am I working on? We'll post up a promo pic that shows the models that we're going to model, and we'll just get after
Well,
it, and we can talk about that kind of stuff. I'll have some stuff to sand and stuff to paint and
this is actually what I'm working on now. Um, it's a let me back up here a little bit. I got
You're a
used to using
cheater.
this.
I unplugged my camera and you got yours all figured out.
Well, I did, but I mean, you can see my this thing takes up the desk.
Yeah.
Um, sometime I'll clean this whole work area off, and we'll have to, like, you can clean yours off, and we'll have to do a session where we're showing workspaces.
Yeah.
But I don't know how well you guys can see the concrete. I'm not done. I got to weather it yet, but you know, this is actually, I don't know how well it shows up in the video, but
It's showing up good.
um, this is this is sanded with like 240 grit, and I did the sanding, you know, lengthwise because that's the way I wanted the pads to look. Once I weather this, you can see that it's got pad lines in it, you know, where they would have put the forms.
Is that styrene?
Yeah, that's a big sheet of styrene.
I'm
I buy
gonna I will have to show you what I'm working on for how I'm doing all of my concrete for the refinery. You'll call me crazy, but then you're gonna start running your FDM printer through the works.
Oh yeah.
It's awesome because I'll share it with you another time. But I'm using the filament printer and creating individual slabs and then putting score joints in them, and then you can hit them with a file, sandpaper, everything, and paint them. They come out. I mean, FDM is just perfect for concrete. I love it.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
And it doesn't take very long to print them because they're so thin, and then you can just glue them down with super glue to foam or plywood or whatever your substrate is.
yeah. See, I have I use the back of my my 19 blade, the back, the pointed edge, at the
Right.
back of it, because I watched another guy making joint lines in concrete, and you score the styrene.
Right.
So I score it to a, you know, particular depth that I'm just used to doing it. You know, it's like 3 or 4 score strikes. Um, and then after I paint it, I go after it with I have this like wash that I make up that's just this filthy, dirty garbage. And I actually just like slop it on. It's one of the last things I do. Like I'll have all those plants on, and I'll have the you know, the ammonia absorber and all the other stuff. And once all that's glued down and everything else is done, the very last thing I do is I come in with this wash, and I literally use like a giant mop brush, and I just like slather this stuff all over it, and it looks like crap. But the cool thing is I mean, I actually make it to where it looks like I've hosed it down with a hose.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is that wherever there's low spots, especially around the plants or, you know, columns that are going to the concrete or something like that, it pools. And in the low spots on the styrene, it'll pool also. And as the water evaporates out of it and it dries, it leaves dirty spots where there would be a pool
From
from
the
the low
pigment
spot in the
left over in
concrete.
the paint. Yeah. With the
Yeah,
wash.
but it also settles into all those concrete seams, and so they'll all show up just like a
Right.
real, like it really would do on a plant that was outside and it was a big pad and it would just be filthy looking.
You know, I used to use the back of a knife for scoring styrene for a long time too. And the one hurdle that I had with that, and I know we're off topic of 3D printing, but it's scratch building too, is when I wanted to turn corners and do some things that weren't necessarily 90-degree lines. So I switched to I take and I cut the end of a safety pin, the pointed end of a safety pin off. I throw that in my pin vise. So now I'm using a safety
Sure,
pin for all my scoring, and it just gives me a little bit more. It's like pencil control for scoring on my
sure.
styrene.
Well, if I have a K&K Force,
I don't know what
so
that
if
is.
uh, it's a they don't make them anymore.
Okay.
Um, you have to look over my pile of junk here, but I can switch the camera over and show you what it looks like. It's this guy. So this
Oh,
folds
okay.
down.
It's
There's a
like a
cutter
die
in
cutter.
there.
Is it a vinyl cutter?
It's no. Well, you can do vinyl in it,
Yeah.
but it it's actually not. You can cut vinyl in it, but the K&K Force is actually made for doing styrene and wood, and they don't make them anymore.
Okay.
I don't know when they stopped making them. I got this one after they stopped making them, but I got it from a guy who bought it and never took it out of the box.
Well, I'm
Um,
sitting on a Silver Bullet Pro 24-inch wide cutter that I've never used. I've had it for 3 years.
yeah.
Just haven't
Well,
gotten
this
around
one,
to it.
I actually got this one specifically for doing cutting styrene platforms.
Yeah.
Because you can do the blade is a swivel blade. You can cut corners and ovals and all kinds of crazy stuff with it, and it's made to do styrene, thin wood. You can actually get a router head for it and do aluminum. I've seen people do aluminum in them.
Oh, okay.
Um, but uh, it worked out better to either FDM print a platform or design it into the product.
Right.
But actually, I just got kind of a foreshadowing of things to come. I actually just got done talking to a company, a guy that I know that owns a huge manufacturing company, and he's got these like, $3.5 million laser cutting machines that cut insanely fast and really thick metal with these lasers. I mean, I'm assuming it's like James Bond stuff.
Right. If it's a three
But
and
I
a half
actually
million
asked him
dollar
the other,
machine, I would hope so.
yeah. So I asked him the other day when I was talking to him, I'm like, so how small of a hole can you cut? Circular hole could you make with the printer or with the laser cutter in like 20,000 stainless? And he told me he could. I asked him, I said, can you do a 20,000 hole in stainless and have it be accurate? And he said yes.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So because that's all Plano is doing. Plano's walkways that they're selling that are stainless, they're not photo etching those. They're laser cutting them.
I
You
didn't
can see
know
that they're
that.
laser cut.
Yeah,
Yeah, if
I
you
don't
buy
buy a
like
lot of their
Plano
stuff, so
fans, if you buy Plano fans for like a SD40-2,
yeah.
um, they sell you the fan blade and then the screen.
Right.
You can look at it and see that it's laser cut.
Okay.
So anyway, he said he said he can do that. So I'm going to draw up decking, expanded metal decking that would be used for a platform like on this ammonia absorber, and have him cut some prototypes out for me. And if they look good, I'm going to stop drawing platforms into my my gizmos, and I'm going to
Yeah.
sell. I'm going to have an option where you can buy the stainless steel platforms. It depends on price too. I'm not going to do it if it's going to, a guy's going to have to pay $60 for the platforms, for this ammonia absorber. That'd be ridiculous.
Yeah, that's the hard thing. Boy, I tell you what, if it's reasonable, I need a bunch of platforms.
Yeah, right. Well, I have designs. I really want to do the platforms that I didn't buy this thing so that I could do round platforms. I mean, I did, but
Right.
primarily what I wanted to do is I wanted to do the platforms for like for Carry Furnace. It's got platforms that go all over the top of the stoves, and they're not just a long straight platform.
Okay.
And I always thought that if a guy could, have a platform that was the whole platform with the straight section and a curved section and all that, and it was just like one platform, it'd be really easy to model that because you just set it on top of the stoves and kind of be done, right? And then you're just building your hand railings and whatever.
Right.
So a guy would still have to take styrene strip and make the edge, make the or angle, styrene angle, and super glue it to the stainless platform, and then he could put hand railings on it. But it would make it give me the ability to do a fairly decent sized platform that would actually be grading, and I think that would just like that would make a model, right? I mean, you can
Yeah,
use you can use styrene diamond tread or decking, but it's not the same as actually having the see-through platform like you do on your on those, right? Yeah, I mean that looks fantastic.
but
You need to
the
fire your camera up and get with the times, mister.
I know it, man. I had it disconnected. My lighting just sucks. I mean, I just gotta fix it.
Well,
Um,
that's a good segue into lighting then. Now that you mentioned
yeah,
lighting.
I mean, it's just
So tell me about your horrible lighting, and then we'll talk about really good lighting.
well. The funny thing is I've got I mean, I'm all as an architect. I'm all about CRI, the color rendition index. So the higher that number, the better quality the light is. But if there's not enough lumens, there's not enough lumens. So I've got a beautiful
Right.
CRI 92 LED fixture above my desk that doesn't light. I mean, it's great for just general modeling,
But it's a
but
CFL lamp, right?
yeah, it's not. It's just not going to cut it to really showcase the detail in the models. And so that's why Kevin and I were shooting this shit before the show, and I was like, well, I'm just going to turn my camera off then, because Kevin didn't have his set up, and then you get it set up 10 minutes into the stream, and now you're flipping back and forth because you figured it out probably while I was talking about something dumb. But I will get it
Well,
fixed because I just need better
no,
lighting.
actually, all I did was update my phone, and then that plug-in, the plug-in for camo that took all of 30 seconds to activate worked like a charm. It
Oh,
came right
sweet.
up in my. I've had a feeling there was some kind of setting I was missing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's talk about how to improve your lighting because
Yeah, that would be a
one of
great
the
thing.
one of the groups that I have on that I started on Facebook is called Modelers Workspace Community, and I I really kind of started it for selfish reasons. I was designing my modeling workspace because much like a lot of guys, I'm sure you included, at some point in your life you were living out of a tackle box at your mom's kitchen table or
Yep.
at a old roll top desk that was a cast off or whatever.
Absolutely.
And I literally spent a year designing my workspace, and I didn't really have the money at the time to build it, which is funny because in my life I'm from a not a very wealthy family, and we had so I as a kid I sat and looked at the Sears toy catalog all the time, but we didn't have the money to buy the stuff in it, so there was lots of dreaming. But in reality what I was doing was I was kind of training myself for research, because and it was a good thing that I couldn't buy things. And so when I was doing my hobby desk, um, it was kind of the same reason. I didn't really have the money, so I just spent my time researching and designing and dreaming. And uh,
That's a good
one of the
process
great
to go through, though.
Oh yeah, totally. People go out and spend money like instantaneously on stuff because they have to have it right then. And
Yeah.
then 2 weeks later they're like, "Oh crap, I could have had this other thing that was a lot
Yeah.
better." So I think it's an advantage when you don't really have the money. But if you have the willpower to not run off to the store and buy what you want to buy, um, you know, uh, whoever you want to believe in, for me, it's God. I think God puts things in your path at the appropriate time. And one of the things that he put in my path was I had subscribed to Model Train TV. And for a year, I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. And one of the videos that they had on there was this guy. I forget his name, so I apologize for not being able to cite who he is.
Bob Ross.
Um, yeah, right, Bob Ross. He's an optometrist, and so he gives this clinic at the NMRA conventions about vision, which, if you think about it, all of us use our vision the most only second to our hands while we're doing this stuff. And so he talked about focal length, about where you model and how to keep your eyes from getting tired and all this other stuff. But one of the things he hit on was lighting. And interestingly enough, you have I've heard you say both in our BS session before the show and now during the show about the lumens. And in reality, the lumens are only important if you're at a good elevation from where you're working.
Okay.
Right? The Kelvin matters a lot more. And the Kelvin is how intense the light is, right? Well,
I thought
sunlight,
the Kelvin rating was the color of the bulb, I thought.
well, it's the intensity, right?
Okay.
So if you're the higher the Kelvin rating, like sunlight is like 6,000 or 6,500 Kelvin, right? So the closer you get to natural sunlight, sure, the colors are going to look more true, but the light will be more intense. So one is bright and one is intensity.
Okay.
Right. So if you don't have a lot of height, like I was saying over my workspace that I have for painting, which I'm not going to show you guys because my hobby desk is destroyed right now.
Come on, you got that camera fired up.
When we talk about modeling spaces, well, as long as I kept it elevated, you would be able to see it. That's fine. So where I paint is not a really high. Let me turn the light on over there. Where I paint is not really tall. The area. There we go. So where I paint is not a really tall area, right? So it's only about 20 inches or something like that.
Sure.
So the lamps that are over the painting area, because they're not very far off the desk, off the work surface, they're 5,000 Kelvin lights, but they're only 3,200 lumens.
Okay.
But the ones that I have above where I model, I'm going to say the height is probably about 5 feet. Those lamps are like 40, I think they're 4,200 Kelvins.
Okay.
But they're like 5,000 lumens. Right?
All
Because
right.
they're higher up. Because they're higher up, I don't need the intensity. I need brightness.
Okay.
Right? So they're really, really bright because they're high up. If you had that same light and it was really bright, but it was only 20 inches off where I was modeling, the light would actually be kind of useless. It's not high up enough for how bright it is.
Well, I mean, and lighting's critical it's certainly critical for displaying layouts, and when we're doing the modeling stuff we do and the details we do, my eyes are going bad as it is. I mean, I'm 51 rolling up on 52 next year, and I'm at that stage where I probably should have switched to S scale a couple of years ago, but I refused to do it. So yeah, I need to fix that lighting piece so that I see the contrast and have a better amount of light just for everyday modeling, so that I can be better at what I do, because you're only as good as the tools you have sometimes, and if you can't see what you're working on, then it's going to create hurdles. So
here's the interesting thing that he talked about. He had age ranges, no matter if your vision is 2020 or 2017 or 2030, right? He had age ranges for the Kelvin rating that you really needed.
Okay, interesting.
Right. So as we get older, we need more intense light for our eyes to process the same information and not become fatigued.
For the contrast.
Sure.
Yeah.
And to be able to see the detail and stuff. But
right.
So I had watched that before I was able to get my executive desk that I use for my hobby desk. And I just had one of those little arm lamps but it had a goofy bulb in it. It's actually, I got it from an art store, so it's like a really good quality version of that lamp, but it's the little round, the little dome, half dome round lamp.
Okay.
And it had I think it said it had a 30-watt bulb, and that's all you could use in it. Well, because LEDs aren't as hot, they don't put out any heat. I went from a 30-watt bulb to a 100-watt LED bulb, and I made sure that it had a really high Kelvin rating, and I ordered it. And when it came, and I changed the lamp out, actually it wasn't 100. I think it was like a 60 or 75 watt bulb. But the Kelvin rating was really high, and I swapped it out, and I immediately noticed that I had an easier time modeling, and my eyes weren't as tired.
Okay.
And so anyway, when I had the opportunity to I finally found, after almost 6 months of looking for a used executive desk, I bought it, and the very next thing I did was I went to Menards. People have Home Depot or whatever they are. You can go on Amazon and buy the Smart Light brand, the Shop Light brand that I buy. But I followed the guy's advice, and I got the like crazy high lumen. I didn't worry about the or not lumen. I got the crazy high Kelvin rating, but I didn't really worry. Yeah, I didn't worry about the lumens for over where I paint, and I got the opposite for where I model for the height, and I hung them up, and I'm like, holy crap, this is fantastic. I mean, it's really, really good light.
Okay.
One thing that I would suggest to you is you don't buy one and hang it over your desk where you model. You buy two. You put one slightly ahead of where you're sitting, and then you put the other one kind of over your head.
Okay.
And that's so that you don't get overshadowing, right? And it's going to eliminate any shadow really while you're modeling. So your hands aren't going to make a shadow because there's light ahead of where you're modeling and light over kind of a little bit behind where your head is. There's light casting down from sort of behind you, and there's light casting down from in front of you.
Okay. I can do that. I mean, the great thing is with the way I've started to reconfigure my office modeling space, it's including my shelf layouts. So my refinery is actually going to sit right here above me, but it's 24 inches off the work surface of my desk. So I can mount lights to the bottom of the shelving system for that desk height part. I'll need to figure out the over my shoulder, whether it's like something up here to my left that I can attach to this big cabinet that hits the desk from higher up. I'll look into that because I mean, I do need to make those changes, and I want to be able to turn my camera on so that you can see my cool stuff.
Well, the one that I have, the two that I have above my modeling area, like one is actually kind of over me right now. I mean, you can see that it's making a shadow with my ball cap, and the other one is about 3 feet away from it, and they run parallel to the length of my big table.
Okay.
And I just put screw eyes in the ceiling, and I got these Molly bolt style ones that hooks, like planter hooks, and I hung them from those white ones. I screwed them into the ceiling, and I just hung the lights over them because they're shop lights. They come with a chain.
Right. Okay. Cool. I'll do it.
But the one that's under the hutch that's over where I paint, I'm actually going to have a new hutch built that will be deeper so that I could get two lights there, because I was going to make brackets and hang the other lamp that I have out kind of over where my hands would be.
Right.
And I thought, well, that's kind of dumb. Why don't I just have I have a guy that I know that builds cabinetry, and he said, yeah, I could just build it out of plywood or whatever, birch plywood. And I'm just going to have a deeper version made so that I can put both lights under there. And then it'll actually be more intense under there, but it's the shadowing when I'm painting that I have a problem with right now. I need to get one of those lights to where it's like between my head and my hands, because there's the shadowing, and I can't really get a good look at what I'm painting unless I turn it to face the light. And then, that's not always, uh, uh, you're not always able to do that when you're painting something with a brush.
Yeah. Have you ever used like a headlamp for that kind of stuff?
I don't own one, and I know
Okay.
the other modelers that are on here are probably like, "What are you, a crazy person?" But I don't own one. I don't normally wear a hat. I'm vain. I wear a hat when I'm outside. Once I can figure out some kind of lighting so that I'm not all like washed out from the hobby lighting.
Well,
on the screen here, I'll probably stop wearing it. But
yeah, next live stream, Kevin, I'm going to promote that we're going to go hot pink and neon blue for our background lighting because that's what streamers do.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think it's a great. I'm intrigued to get it done because it's going to help me for putting any type of modeling video stuff together that I've been starting to work on, because I mean the quality is everything. If the video quality is going to be really bad, then it's just a reflection of at some point it becomes a reflection on your dedication to modeling. So
sure.
That's why I'm not showing my video tonight, because it wasn't looking good, and I'm going to let you steal the show with your benchtop camera that you got all figured out and set up.
The lighting that you have on right now is nice because it's more of a warm light, and it looks okay for the live stream.
But it's horrible for modeling.
Mine's like crazy intense. But if I switch over to the the camera, you can kind of see there's not really any shadows.
Right.
Which
is going to be great for when we start getting into showing some more stuff of what we're working on. It looks fantastic.
You can see that there's a little bit of a shadow from, like under this pipe, and my hand my hand will make a shadow. But if you look at this, there's not really a shadow around the base of it or whatever.
Right.
And that's kind of the lighting that you want, at least I want, for when I'm modeling. I actually did think about getting another shop light to hang up and put it like further out, so that it would be like literally over the front edge of the big table where I do the big models. But I don't know if I'll do that or not. The nice thing about these lights that I got, the smart, I don't remember. I hold on a minute. Let me get the brand off of them.
Okay.
The Smart Electrician brand is that the particular ones that I got, you can gang them, so they've got an outlet in one end of them, so you can plug the next light into it.
Ah, cool.
And
okay.
It doesn't turn them all off with like one switch, but it does make it nice when you're hanging them like that. You don't have all these cords hanging down the wall. I have one cord hanging down the wall. So
you can gang 3 or 4 of them together and have one plugged in. That's perfect.
Yeah, you just have one plugged in because they're LED. They don't really draw any power. So
okay. Hey, I'm going to switch gears real quick. You good with that?
Yeah.
Because I got a question I haven't asked you yet. Or if I have, we did it off stream and I can't remember. We're going to go back to 3D printing for a second before we get rabbit trailed again. When you're cleaning your products, do you only use IPA? I can't remember if you use anything other than IPA or not. Acetone, denatured alcohol.
You mean to
cleaning your resin when they come out?
Clean the resin off of them?
Yeah.
No, I use 99% IPA.
Okay.
99.9% IPA. Because that's what Formlab says to do.
Have you tried anything else? Just curious.
No. When everybody was being an insane person and buying up all the damn alcohol in the country, I fortunately found enough to keep me going while I was printing stuff for people that were stuck in their houses,
right?
And sending orders out, and then it all kind of went back to normal, and I can get it again. Although it's crazy money now.
Yeah,
it's literally doubled in 12 months, the price of it has doubled. And I actually don't. I think we talked about this once. I don't really want to raise my prices on my products, but I'm going to have to because I'm literally like breaking even right now, and that's not the point.
Well, and resin costs are going up too.
Fortunately, Formlabs resin has not gone up. I was really shocked about that, but it actually makes me want to like pull some money out of my savings account and buy a lot.
Yeah.
Just put in like call them up and say, hey, look, I want to buy a giant order. How much, give me a discount or something, and just buy a bunch of it because I'm afraid it is going to go up soon, especially with all the rumors of the polymers and stuff being hard to come by anymore. And I mean, the world's kind of a crazy place right now, but I just use IPA.
I went into the same hurdle that you did last year when people thought toilet paper was never going to get made again, and apparently IPA was the same thing. I'm like, what are these people doing with all this
Clean
stuff?
Everything.
I was like, well, I can't. I didn't have a local resource to find anything even remotely reasonable. I was like, this is ridiculous. So I went on like a 2-week. I just got to start trying some stuff and doing the research on who's was Uncle Jesse's testing like 10 different products on YouTube. I'm like, Simple Green sucks. If anybody tells me they're using it and they're getting great results, they're not a real 3D printer in my opinion. I've tried it, used it. It's awful. It leaves the grossest residue. And then you got to clean that off. It gets rid of resin, but then you got to clean Simple Green off. I will tell you what I have found. There's 2 products that work amazing aside from IPA. I mean, if I could get it reasonable, I would go back to that, although I can't stand the smell, so that's a little bit of an issue for me. But denatured alcohol, because I can buy a gallon of it at the hardware store for $14. Or acetone. Acetone is by far the best. Here's the problem. If you're not paying attention, it'll burn right through your resin and it'll disappear in 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy solvent. I would rather just have the astringent value.
It's just way too hot.
I actually did. I think I emailed. I think I emailed Formlabs and had asked them if there was another substance, and they gave me a name of a chemical, but I looked it up and I can only buy it by like a 5-gallon pail or something. I don't want to have that here, and it was really stinky versus the IPA.
Well, the IPA's, I think, pretty bad. How much of that are you running through a month?
Oh, that all depends on orders.
Yeah.
A gallon, at least a gallon.
Yeah, that's about what I go through in denatured alcohol. Sometimes I'll hit 1.5 gallons if I'm doing a bunch of small parts where I'm literally going in and pulling things off the printer every 1.5 hours. And I've just, all day long, 2-3 printers running to get them, stocked and stuff. I'll go through a little bit more then because I don't like working with what some people still consider clean resin. I have 3 baths. I have like the ultimate dirty bath, which is a quick rinse, and then I've got a dirty bath, which is still pretty clean. But then my clean bath that I drop parts in, swirl around before I let them dry, I keep that sucker. I mean, I'm swapping it out every 2 days because I found it's just not worth it to try and save any money for $14 to $20 a month to get my parts perfectly clean. And then I set mine to dry. Do you allow yours to dry, or do you throw them right in the oven?
No, I let them dry. Matter of fact, not in the summer, but in the wintertime, I actually set up a space heater that has a forced air on it, and I'll set the parts up in front of that and let them, because it actually helps according to Formlabs, it helps the heat helps the part while it's drying. It helps it to evaporate the alcohol very quickly.
Right.
And then it actually helps in the curing process. If you buy a Form Cure from them, that's actually UV and heat. And I forget how hot it runs. I want to say it runs at like 100 degrees or something like that. So it puts out some heat. And I haven't tried it yet. I don't know. I just never ordered one. I suppose I should order one. It's actually got a carousel in it too, where it rotates the part while it's doing it. And I don't know. I read a bunch, and didn't really talk to anybody else, but I read a bunch, and I actually just bought a nail oven.
Yeah. I'm not up for the gimmick of the wash and cure stations. That's just me personally. Uh,
Yeah.
they're probably great for those that are only printing two, three, four, maybe half a dozen things a week in the miniature world or something that are fairly easy. But I mean, not like you. If you start running a small batch of stuff, I mean, every
Hmm.
now and then I get a week where I'm just like, I'll print 1,000, 1,400 pieces. I'm not,
Oh
I'm
wow.
not, I'm not running that stuff through a wash and cure station. I got glass buckets with my denatured alcohol and they go in the bath and I clean them quick and then I let them dry.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Yeah. They the one nice thing about the form wash is that the part is it has a pump in it. It actually circulates the alcohol,
does it
and
filter the
it
resin out?
I that and they said no. I asked them that like 2 years ago, and
Okay.
it did not at that time. But
Okay.
I asked them if they would, if they had thought about filtering the resin out of it. But I don't know how you would do that. I'm not that
Particles
kind
might
of
just be way too
engineer.
small.
Yeah, I don't know if you could, if you could you'd have to know what the particle size was versus the molecule of alcohol. And I mean I could probably send an email to Wix filters and they would tell me what you could use. Maybe I should. And then buy a foam wash and take it apart and
Mod it.
run the hose through the filter. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I've actually thought about building. I actually thought about building more of a um like a plunger type affair where the basket would be on a plunger and just put a small eccentric wheel on it so it would just move it up and down gently
Huh.
in the wash and
Yeah.
just let the alcohol actually just the force of the alcohol against it wash it like a wave kind of deal because I think that would do pretty well too. I actually did talk with somebody about using an ultrasonic cleaner
Yeah.
with IPA in it, and I didn't really understand why they said, well, it'll catch fire, and I'm like, I didn't really understand why it would catch fire. I get that it's got a really super low flash point, but it's an ultrasonic cleaner. They were saying, oh
Yeah.
yeah, you got to put a baggie of water in it so that if it does, catch fire, the fire would burn through the bag and put it out. But
Which, yeah, I've never
it just
thrown any
doesn't
of
work
that
out
in
in my
there.
head. It's an ultrasonic cleaner, so it's passing sound waves through the alcohol, and it does. You can turn it. The one I have has a heater on it. You could heat it, but I wouldn't want to do that because then the alcohol would evaporate very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I,
But
I have one, but the only thing I use it for is when I'm running like real quick rudimentary test prints. I've stupid and bought so much water washable resin back when I thought I was going to be eco friendly. That stuff's junk. So now I use it for my
yeah,
test prints just to
it's
get
garbage for sure.
yeah, just to get like a quick fit on things to make sure that I've modeled it the way I want. I can throw those in the ultrasonic cleaner with water and crank that heater on and it works great. And so that's part of my research and development that has worked. So until I burn through all that water washable, I think I have 4 liters left. I was like, oh,
Right.
this stuff is just. I mean, it really is. It's garbage. It It's a great idea in theory, but for a quality print, no. Might be great for a
You
guy
know,
doing miniatures or something, but I think it's just garbage.
do you have a dual extruder on your FDM printer?
No, I'm a single only.
Yes, I'm a single also, but I've read about this water soluble supports, and I've actually thought about that, but I don't have a dual extruder, and I don't know you can put another extruder head on my Voron, um, but that would make sense on FDM. I mean, I could see
Right.
having the water soluble supports and have it build the supports as you went, because then you could just pop it off the build platform and throw it in a bucket of water and come back X number of minutes later and just have your part.
Right. Yeah,
And
it's
I would assume there's still cleanup there, but
yeah. I have not ventured into the multi-head extruders just because it seems to be 50-50 with the success rate. And I don't want to be jacking around tinkering with trying to figure that piece out with FDM. So I've avoided it. I mean, I've had some guys that have had great luck with it that I've seen online, and then some that they complain nonstop and wish they'd never bought it.
yeah.
So
So
I
I just
haven't gone
want to
that route.
throw out to the three viewers that we have.
Well, Beta
Thanks for.
Landscaping is my nephew. That's Seth. Hey
Oh,
Seth,
all
how are you
right.
doing, buddy?
Well, if you guys have questions or whatever, you can ask questions too, and we won't just sit and ramble about stuff. But um, I don't know whether I know you don't have a lot of structures per se in your um in a refinery situation. But have you thought about structural parts that you would want to make on your FDM printer? Because I know you do
Yeah,
the column supports, the really nice
I
column supports
I'll have to
or column footers, I should say.
I'll have to pull to I'll bust the I've got an 8 stall roundhouse that I've been working on for years that I'd mentioned a while back. It's all printed with FDM. I mean, it's basically the columns, the beams, everything, because it's a concrete structure, and it's one that when you understand how the FDM printers can really help you in organizing how they lay on your bed, not unlike 3D printing in resin, you can take advantage of that. And I mean, they're all basically, it's like building a precast kit with FDM filament. So basically all my beams interlock into the columns, and it's a very intricately detailed model. But I'm only at that stage where I need to finish sanding all the columns and beams, and it takes a while to do it. But that may be one that I work on during our model build session. Because it's a pretty good size module. I can have it set up on the desk. But I do print. I'll get into some filament stuff with concrete structures, or doing. I built some trusses a while back for a guy that they turned out pretty good, but I still generally use PLA or PETG for most of the stuff. I'm not using ABS just because it prints so much hotter, and I like to be able to switch back to the PLA stuff for 90% of what I do. I don't know.
Now, how are you gluing it though?
I've used both CA glue and, believe it or not, old school Testors model cement glue,
Oh, and that'll work?
and it works for PLA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I've
Interesting.
not had any parts bust apart yet,
Hmm.
but it's worked really well. Now, I haven't gotten into trying any other super glues and stuff. Just standard CA. Well, I use Gorilla Glue, either the gel or the regular kind, but the gel tends to work a little bit better for PLA.
Hmm.
But yeah, I did a bunch of research online before I started testing glues, because PLA is a pain to glue if you try and do it with. You can't use any of the solvent type glues; they don't work. I think ABS you can
Oh, okay.
use, like Tamiya's thin cement and stuff to glue those, can't you?
Yeah,
Any
you can
solvent
use
based.
Plastruct. I use Plastruct plastic weld. I use
Okay,
Plastruct plastic weld for everything because I like how aggressive it is and how it actually does fuse the plastic together.
right.
Um, but it will also fuse ABS and butyrite to styrene or any of the three to each other.
I wonder if it'll
And
fuse the PETG. I'll have to get some pieces out and test it on
I
it.
don't know. But I've started making roof trusses. Uh, this is one of
Yeah.
them. This is for the byproduct plant, and I actually asked for. I'll have to take my headphones off to go get one, but I actually asked for suggestions because I have had people ask over the years for roof trusses for the cast houses because the cast house and the blast furnace, a lot of them were not just a a simple peaked roof like that one that I just showed was. Let me grab one of the ones from Youngstown Sheet and Tube.
Okay.
So this is one.
Oh yeah,
from Youngstown
that looks
Sheet
great.
And Tube, and I actually want to do some of the ones from Sparrows Point too, because they had like a heavier pitch on them, and they had like a skirting that came down almost over the sides of the cast house. But I'm really happy with how these printed out. The perimeter is 100 by 100, and then the bridging is which James is probably squirming because I don't know the actual terms for this stuff. I'm just calling it bridging. But and you would too, I guess. You're an architect. The bridging is 100 by 60, so it's narrower. I felt that making the outside wider would be a better surface or better thickness for the perimeter, and then
correct.
You're putting your sheeting on it for your roofing. I just thought it would be better for the perimeter to be a little thicker. But this one is actually prototype size, because I got a really nice print from Rick Rollins. This is from Youngstown Sheet and Tube, furnace number 3, and I'm gonna. This is too wide. It's actually wider, which you could figure that out. It's wider than the Walters kit, but I'm actually gonna make another one of these that's narrower, that would actually just like directly replace the ones on the Walters kit, so you could change the roof's pattern a little bit.
Okay.
Roof shape, I should say, a little bit.
For the steel mill guys, is the Walters kit that they have, is that kind of the general go-to regardless of which furnace you guys are building? There's one kit to be used, and that's it?
I think it's the one that people buy because it has a lot of the complicated things in it that I guess a guy just wouldn't want to build himself.
Okay.
But now they're discontinued again, and this is the third run. I kind of don't. I doubt that the molds were new for this run. They just kind of did the same thing Walters always does. They rearranged things. They included the walkways in this one, and they charged you a little more money, but you got all that stuff in one box. But I really kind of, either the molds are worn out, or I really kind of doubt they're going to make another run. But I think guys start with that because it's got the complicated things like the bustle pipes and the tweers and the cast house floor. Because a lot of the rest of that stuff you could build yourself. It's just columns and roof trusses and stuff. I mean, I'm working toward having everything a guy would need, minus the evergreen parts, the columns and that kind of thing, and brick sheet. I'm kind of working toward having the pieces a guy could buy, and then scratch build a furnace. I already have all the stoves. I have like 4 different kinds of stoves. I have a furnace column now. I'm not going to do a ton of furnace columns, but I'll probably do maybe 2 more that are other sizes.
I imagine that the stuff that you're doing is all anybody needs other than the superstructure.
Right, yeah. The superstructure stuff is out of evergreen sleeves,
Yeah, and
some sheet.
That's one of the things I've got. There's about these are 5 or 6 guys that are basically in line for the petroleum coke tower that I've put together. And I just had Martin ask me today if I was going to do the drilling derrick, and I said I'm going to do the detail parts. I'm probably not going to do any of the superstructure because that's all styrene, and it's just boy, to try and print all that stuff really would be it'd be a big time investment to get it all laid out and organize it. 'Cause I started down that road and I was like, nope, going to styrene. This will be much faster to just scratch build the superstructure, but I'll give the platforms for guys to build off of. And then that way they've got a pretty solid foundation literally to build the superstructure up off of. And then I'll probably put together some plans or something on how, the drilling derrick superstructure can be built based on, the parts and pieces, the drill head and everything that I'm modeling and putting together for those guys. And I'll probably do something fun for the cap up at the top. But I would imagine that's really the scratch building piece that's all that's missing on those stoves after you're done. I mean, I know you have most of that stuff pretty well wrapped up. So
Yeah,
I'll be curious
to
see
stoves, burners.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see where you go, because I'll probably end up doing my own custom cast floor for the because I'm modeling mine after Furnace A at Colorado Fuel and Iron, because I've got a pretty good set of the old Sanborn maps to figure that out. But I don't know that I want to get in and deal with all the furnace stuff, but I can do the custom floor, and then I'll enjoy building the superstructure part of that. I'll just have to get with you and find out which furnace you have that probably fits in terms of the size of that particular furnace. I just don't know enough about the steel mills, so just curious what those kits include, don't include, and what's really missing. And it sounds like some plastic structure parts, and that really ends up being it once you're done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Walters kit, it's got hot blast valves, but they're just a piece of tubing. I mean, really, they're just a piece of tube instead of what a hot blast valve really looks like. And can't remember if they have something that's supposed to emulate a burner, but their burners don't look like burners.
Yeah.
So I mean, once since I already have the stoves, and now I have a gas washer, and I have electrostatic precipitator. I actually do have an early Whitwell Whitwell dust collector that I haven't even printed it out because it's really big, and I'm like, people aren't going to buy this because it's not. I think what I need to do is I need to figure out how to make it more of a kit where you would integrate a piece of tubing for the body of it from Evergreen now, since they bought Plastruct. Right. I don't know if they're going to cast off the Plastruct name or not, but the actual like the Walters size dust collector, I don't know that I would 3D print something like that. Maybe the top and the bottom of it.
What about N scale though?
Do a piece of N scale, I could, yeah. N scale for sure, I could. I mean, the gas washer that I'm working on, it's also a simple piece, but it won't be overly expensive to sell it, and to put it in the catalog and sell it. But the cast house floor is really all I'm missing. I probably will print a bustle pipe, but I've got furnace columns.
Yeah.
And I've got the stoves and stuff. So, I mean, really it is kind of just, I'm down to the cast house floor, and that's just picking one. The one that everybody wants, I think first is a reversed, Walters cast house floor, but reversed, so that everything is on the other side. The slag is on the other side, and the slag chutes are on the other side. And that way a guy could build two furnaces and have one track servicing, like the slag. And
right. Well, I can't imagine that would take you too long to put together, because that's all gonna print on the FDM machine, right? You're not doing that in resin.
No, yeah, I'll do it on the FDM machine out of ABS, because that's really kind of the foundation, so to speak. It's the one piece in the blast furnace proper that ties everything together.
Okay.
So it needs to, I don't want to do that out of something where you'd have to use super glue. I'd rather use something like ABS and have a guy be able to use the orange bottle of plastic weld, and that way when it's all together, it's very stable, and it's he's not going to worry about things breaking off of it or whatever.
Sure. Hey Seth, bud, thanks for dropping in tonight. Appreciate it. I've been working with Seth. I sent him a bunch of train stuff a while back. He's getting into the model railroading stuff, and so
cool.
He's my kids are all grown, so he's a nephew that he's into the 3D printing and the drone stuff, and great kids. So I'm doing my part to try and find the next modeler in a younger generation.
Yeah, right on. My son can't wait to model with me, and I actually, our schedules are kind of crazy because he's young, so he's got outside of school stuff that we do, and then we go to the training museum and all that kind of stuff, and we do build blue box cars together. I buy blue box cars whenever I can. We just went to the swap meet this past weekend and bought a bunch, so he's got cars he can put together.
That's awesome.
But he desperately wants to start modeling with me, and I need to find some projects he can do that are kind of his skill level.
Yeah.
To actually put together and actually, kind of show him how everything's how well to build something, all the slow down and take your time and that kind of thing.
It's so hard. I get caught up in it too. I just want to get things done, and I was like, just slow down, walk away, get away from the bench for a few minutes, and then come back and tackle it. That's me with
painting this building. Oh. I thought about airbrushing this thing, and it's not. It just doesn't. It doesn't suit. I think it would be. I'd have to end up taking time to mask off all the inside of it, and so I've been sitting with a brush. I have this giant jar of just these 50-cent artist brushes that I got at a art store that was going out of business. I bought like the whole container of them, and I just toss them when I'm done. I'm using acrylic paint too. I could go wash them out, but the bristles kind of fall out of them every once in a while. I have to keep a paper towel handy where I can pull the bristles out as they fall out. But yeah, I just been mopping it. So I did an end wall, 2 end walls last night, and I know what you're saying. I want to go back to the cool stuff like building the ammonia absorber.
Yeah.
But what I really need to do is be smart and paint the outside of the building, and then put the mortar on it, and then clean that, and then ink it, dye it so that it all looks right, and then put the windows in. And I don't know about with the refinery guys, but we have to like model from the inside out, as they say.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean necessarily that you just are actually modeling, as in gluing things on. You have to know when to stop and paint something or run the wiring for the lights or whatever, and actually do weathering. I mean, I do all that stuff on a really big model that has depth to it. Like the front of this building is going to have all these pipes and all this other stuff on it.
Right.
And I actually went to glue on one of the pipe racks the other day and was like, oh, wait, don't put that on there. You need to
refinery
paint
modelers
all this because it's going to be a pain in the ass to get the brick. I use Robert's brick mortar. It's going to be a pain in the ass to wipe all that off after I put the mortar lines in. If there's all these other detail parts on the brick, I need to do all this first.
Yeah, so. The refinery guys are the same way. Those that I'm finding as I continue to research and find some of the modelers that are into the refinery stuff, that it's inside out, one piece at a time. And I'm learning this because I don't have a bunch of references to go to. So I'm back to, literally surfing through the steel mill page, watching some of the guys and, your stuff included on how parts are coming together. Because I found real quick that if I start gluing things together, oh shoot, how am I going to paint all the pipes and do the things I want to do with decals and stuff? I can't. I need to paint this first. So that's why I went through very specifically, like with the distillation column. I put together in pieces by platform so that I could specifically go down, put all my pipe run brackets on, and then prime everything so I could hit the backs of all of my handrails. Because once I put the whole model together, I won't be able to paint the backs of the handrails with my airbrush. And so it's sitting downstairs in the 6 or 7 parts ready to go together, but I'm getting ready to mask off all of the decks so that I can paint my handrails as safety yellow or safety red. I still haven't picked my color for my handrails, so they're sitting on the paint booth or paint table downstairs waiting for that. But I'm learning that real quick, that's the patience part, because I started putting a bunch of stuff together and I found myself in an oh shoot moment. It's like, this is not going to work out well for me. And so I had to stop. Unfortunately, I'd only gotten to one piece. And so now I'm mocking up the model without gluing it together, trying to align all my pipe rack runs with the pipes slid through my support brackets, and trying to delicately super glue everything in place so I can pull all of those vertical pipe runs out and off the model to take downstairs to airbrush. And it's coming together great, but it is a completely different process than opening up somebody else's kit and sanding a few plastic sprues and slapping it together. So
yeah, there's a lot more thought process, I think. And I think that's a big advantage to what you and I do, is that we are both scratch builders.
right.
And so I really, I mean, I would assume you think about that, right, while you're drawing up a new product.
Oh yeah, very specifically.
How is a guy going to get in here and paint this, or how is a guy going to sand this, or how is this going to be assembled? I mean, it's interesting. I'm a professional fabricator, so I just think about that stuff anyway, because I have to think about, how's the painter going to get to this? Is it going to be powder coated? How do you service this? So, I mean, I just translated that over, but I don't know if that is the same from did you bring that from more of the modeling aspect, or did you bring that more from your real life work?
It was probably a combination of both, because I've done a lot of modular type design in the profession of architecture. The mindset was kind of already there to build things in a modular fashion. And so the whole process of people putting kits together, because I'm not a model kit builder by education. This is just something I love to do as a scratch builder. But I've been thinking, how does somebody else take one of my kits and not mess it up? I don't want somebody complaining it's so hard to put together. That's how the whole tab system was developed for my vertical columns, because I didn't want to get 10, 12 hours into a print and forget to have filled the resin tank back up and lose, the top portion of a print, and then be like, oh, shoot, I got to start all over. So that's really what started getting me into the modular aspect of everything I'm doing, and how I can be more efficient but keep it easy for the modeler for all those things: ease of assembly, ease of sanding parts, ease of painting, so that my goal is that it's enjoyable. But with what we're doing, it's a little bit beyond just a simple plastic kit. There's just a different process.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
But I gotta be honest. When I saw you working on the electrostatic precipitator, is that what it's called? So I'll learn this stuff. I immediately jumped online. I said, I know refineries have this. I know they have, because I've read so much about it, and they do, but they don't look nearly as cool as what you put together. So I'm online I'm back to research and development. How do I find something really cool like Kevin has that I can model for the refinery? Yeah, nope. It's just superstructures and columns and pipes, tied to a boring building.
I actually saw those because they have those at Cary. That must have been somewhat of a common design, the one that I did. But I actually got the idea from Jeff Bourne in his videos. I mean, I'll just be honest. I did research them, but again, a good fabricator is a lazy fabricator. Well, he had already done. He'd already told people how to model it, and the one thing that I kind of look at as an advantage there is that there is a measure of how-to that I will have to pass on to a guy that's buying the kit, but at the same time, if they're not going to go to the level of detail that I went on mine with, like the Tichy platform stanchions and that kind of stuff, they literally could watch Jeff's video, Super Detailing Walters Blast Furnace Volume 2, and kind of just follow along what he does, and they'll be able to skip over building a goggle valve, because they just take the one out of the kit. They just take the one out of the kit and put it on. So I just wanted to take the monotony out of building those things, because you got to build 4 for that kit. But the idea was that I would just make the basic things, and like, he makes in his video, he makes all the little manhole covers, and they look like a little round disc, and it's a good representation of a manhole cover. In mine, it's an actual manhole cover, and it's got a little
Yeah, you got the
tit
holes
on
in
the
the
back of
side so
it.
that you can run a piece of phosphor bronze or brass or whatever, and the
No,
hinge.
the manholes actually, they all have a seat they all have a boss that they glue to on the outside of the precipitator, but
Yeah,
it's just got a hole in the middle of it, and on the back of the um on the back of the manhole is a corresponding tab
yeah.
that you put some glue on it, and it fits into the hole, so you're not having to sit there and try to line it directly over that diameter of the boss. It just fits in the middle, and you're just lining up with the hinges, getting the hinges level.
Right.
um but I kind of timed what I was doing, and versus what I know Jeff has told me it takes him to actually build that stuff. And to put I want to say there are something like 18 manholes on that thing, and then there's 4 clean out hatches. And once it took me half an hour to clean up all the parts because they're little, so they don't have a lot of contact points on them.
Yeah.
And just take my flat file and just make sure that the surface of the boss was flat, and then I test fitting. Everything is test fitting to make sure it fits together properly before you grab the AC and the ACC and put it on there. But once it took me maybe half an hour to clean up the parts, and then to put all 17 or 18 of those manholes and the four clean out hatches on, it took me literally like 15 minutes.
Yeah. That's have you seen my large transformer? The one I've been working on is the burned
Yeah.
out version. That's what I did with
Yeah.
all of the electrical covers. I said, because I've been trying to print that thing with all those parts and pieces as one model. I was like, this is dumb. And I was like, so I created the holes in the main transformer, and then I printed all those little bitty access covers as small separate parts because they're all exactly the same. Sand the backs
Yeah,
flat, glue
that's
them in
all
place,
manufacturing,
done.
right?
Yeah,
It's all manufacturing, right? You have to learn manufacturing thought process.
yeah.
And for me, having all those holes in the vessel body, the precipitator body, just made it easier to print it. It was more air vents. You got to wash it out, it washes out easier.
But yeah, after I
And
went through the whole struggle of separating all these parts and pieces and figuring it out, I was like, oh, this thing prints 100% consistent every time. No more support failures because the way I have it designed, it prints flat to the plate.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah,
now all the
it's
parts.
easier to orient it because there's less
It's
detail, so
awesome.
there's less supports. Yeah, I get it. I wanted to
Yeah.
say thanks to Bartman for he just gave me a shout out for telling him that the Walters kit was metric, and I guess that made his plotting for the downcomer a lot easier.
That's awesome.
And it's just one of those things where I just lucked into it too, because I was like, why doesn't this fit right? Grab my handy dandy Starrett caliper and measured it, and sure enough, it's not a SAE number. That's not a standard number. But well, I'm looking at the clock on the wall. I gotta go to work tomorrow.
I just checked it for the first time. It's 10:40 already.
Yeah, I think we were trying to keep it to an hour, and we went to, an hour and 40 minutes. But
Well,
anyway, thanks for
it is what it is, I guess.
thanks. Yeah, thanks to the guys that hung out with us tonight.
Absolutely.
If you like what we're doing, be sure to subscribe to the page, and maybe throw up a thumbs up on there. Tell your friends and neighbors, send them a link. I know lots of people are watching just on YouTube rather than watching us live, but I just wanted to thank everybody that is watching, whether you're watching recorded or live. And if you have suggestions for stuff that you want us to talk about, or we've been chatting offline about doing some live modeling. we'll find some stuff that doesn't take up 4 hours of your time to watch us model. But if you have things that you want to see us live model, to maybe to get some examples for yourself or upgrade your own skill level, or you have suggestions for things that we could upgrade our skill level on, just throw it in the posts on YouTube, and we'll address those as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Throw a comment in there, and we're happy to discuss it in an upcoming live stream and or on the Facebook pages that we're both on. So I'd like to do a live modeling one maybe next go around, so you and I can chat about that, and we'll see what
Sure.
we can come up with and figure something out that'll be a lot of fun, hopefully for those that stick around with us. So anything else for you,
right.
Kevin?
Nope. Have a good evening.
All right, guys.